ready. We're prepared. Do not give in to fear. We are fearless. This is not the time to be afraid. This is a time to stand up and fight back and to resist any temptation for them to divide us. We're in this together. The rule of law is on our side. We will not give in, not give up. We will not capitulate. We will not bow. We will not bend. We will survive.
Actually was scheduled to speak with this woman, but she has a law degree. She has a PhD. She has written many books. She is brilliant. Howard University grad. I say that because Dr. Carr is here. Michigan, University of Michigan, law school, and where she earned her PhD as well. We are here with greatness. We are here with a legend. We are here with one of the most brilliant minds, and she's seen a lot. Dr. Professor Mary Frances Berry. Hey.
Thank you for having me.
My absolute pleasure. I was talking to myself before I came in that I am living a charmed life. I get to talk to some amazing people on these airwaves. And so I was like, I get to talk to Dr. Berry today. And you've seen some things. You've been on this earth 87 years.
87 years.
87 years. And you don't stop. But I'm imagining, though, I was talking yesterday because I lived through Nixon. I remember him resigning, Carter, Reagan, Reaganomics, crack, Clinton, the crime bill, and the impact on our community. You've seen way more. Tell us where we are in your history. What do you see?
It was, for me, talking to people and having people call me and text me all, for the last few weeks, all the time, talking about how surprised they are. Everybody was surprised. Why? I didn't know they would go this far. I said, well, why didn't you? People told you. But anyway, I always thought that Reagan, in my time, was pretty bad. After all, he tried to fire me from the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights because I told the public all the bad stuff he was doing, trying to turn back the clock on civil rights. And he told a Black reporter, a woman who has now passed away, unfortunately, who was White House correspondent, he told her that, she said, why are you trying to fire Mary Frances Berry? He said, she's served to my pleasure and she's not giving me very much pleasure.
Oof. Oof.
Oh, which went, if it had been the internet, now it would have been on the internet, it wouldn't have viral. Anyway,
it would have gone viral for sure.
The whole point is that these people, I think we underestimate them in a way. Some people kept telling me over and over again, well, they will only go so far. They will only go so far. And I said, well, you're wishing. What they have done is very smart. This bill that they did today, they're even worse. And for Nixon, I was down at the White House across from Lafayette Square with a friend, the first ones to call out, resign, resign. And one night, the night before he resigned, and people came and gathered all around us. So I've seen a lot of things in my time, but they're smart, these MAGA people. They're not stupid. What they did is pass this bill. And if you look at the details, which most people won't do, when you get a tax cut, if you get one for your taxes for next year in April, when you do your taxes, you'll say, oh, that's wonderful. Joy, joy. We got, look at that. The man gave us a tax cut. And then they pasted so that the cuts would come up a few months after that, so that you will have forgotten, they think, that they were going to cut all these things, which is in the bill. And you'll think, well, back. So, what's up with that? What's wrong with that? And that they will slide on into the 2026 congressional elections and win the House again and win the Senate. That's what they think. And they are right that many people get so caught up in joy that they don't bother to read anything or listen to anything. My niece always tells me, well, Aunt Mary, you should realize people just want to have some fun. So, they want to have some fun, but they want their lives and those of their families to be lives that they can thrive and that they don't have to worry about, where they're going to live and whether they're going to get anything to eat. So pay attention look at the bill, and when you say, I'm getting a tax cut, look down the road and see what's happening to Medicaid and the SNAP program, the food program, and all the rest of those things.
Dr.
It's sneaky.
Berry, not sneaky. It was in Project 2025 what they were going to do. And
Right.
before that, Atwater and them had a plan. Before that, after Reconstruction, they had a plan. You are a strong proponent of reparations. You know this stuff better than I do, better than most of us, better than probably all of us. I want to know. So you were born on the heels of the rise of the Third Reich. I'm sure you don't remember World War II and how it ended because you were a child. But the conversations around what this time is, how dire is it? What should we be most concerned about?
Well, you made two very good points in your question. The first is that Project 2025, which I did not take at first as seriously as I should have. I said, every administration has a transition plan. I'm not even going to bother to read it. It probably tells who they're going to appoint and what they're going to do because they do it every administration. And the press did tell us some things. People say, there are people who tried to tell us, you should worry about this and whatever. But most people just didn't get it. They would mouth if you're in a meeting or something, work out for Project 25. And then I would say, well, what's in it? And they had no idea. They just knew it was a phrase. It was supposed to be bad. If you look at what has happened in the Nazi, the Third Reich, if you look at the things more recently in countries in Europe and around the world where they have ended up with fascism and authoritarianism, that you will see that we are doing exactly the same thing. The pattern that they are taking, that they're doing, you go after the money and you fool the people and you blindfold them and you tell them that, but you also take away their rights to express themselves. When I was telling my students all the time, while we're learning legal history, let's learn not just about the 14th Amendment, which is important, and not about ending slavery, which is important, but let's think about freedom of expression and the right to protest and all of the other rights that you have. And my students would yawn and say, well, we're not, nobody's going to do anything about that. Need to know. Let's talk about the 14th Amendment and equal protection and so on. And I said, if you can't get the right to object and to petition your government, as Callie House, who I wrote a book about, used to say, you got a right to petition, she said, your government, then you will not be able to push back if indeed these people try to take away the equality of rights that they put in for Black people with the 14th Amendment. Now, I hope people understand. I also hope that the point that I made first about how sneaky they are with the way they put this thing together, so that first comes the check from the tax, what you think. And then after that, when you forgot all about it, they will say, oh, here comes all of that money is gone. So I hope people don't forget.
I'm not optimistic. So I have not been alive long enough to be able to say this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I was saying before November, year leading up to it, that we're voting not for Kamala Harris, but for the right to protest Kamala Harris. We're voting for the right to be able to push politicians to do things. I was very clear that the election of Trump would probably strip us from the ability to do that. Why did I know that? Because during COVID, this man cleared Washington, D.C. so he could walk through with an upside down Bible. He deployed the National Guard on peaceful protesters, and he wanted to know why he couldn't shoot them. Well, at the time, he did not have, all of the legal apparatuses to do that. Now he does. When he talks about police, being too gentle when arresting people who are under the law, innocent until proven guilty, why not bang their heads when you put them in the cars? You know now that this man could care less about the rule of law. And in this big, ugly BS bill, qualified immunity, police still will have the right to do whatever. Coupled with the military targeting Black men in particular, I feel like something's going on domestically that is right in where you're talking about, which makes me really concerned as a citizen that we have freedom of speech until you don't. And then what? because as I sit here on these airways every day, free as a bird, that could end really quickly in this country as we are. And I don't want it to, but I just see it and I don't know what the recourse is. So I guess what I'm asking you is, what can we do about it?
Okay, there's one thing I wanted to make sure I mentioned. Those of us who did the Free South Africa movement to end apartheid in South Africa so that Trump could bring them white South Africans over here, talk about they being discriminated. Anyway, if we had done the Free South Africa movement now, we say they would have deported us to El Salvador if they didn't kill us.
Right.
And the peace
Right.
students who were supporting us and all the churches, all the people, all of us would have been rounded up if we did this right now. Because saying you have the right to do something, the right to protest, the right whatever, think it's not just having the right. You have to be able to exercise the right and to keep the pressure on, and you have to be resilient and be willing to do it and make sacrifice and all that stuff. But the point is that if they take all your lawyers away, look at what they're doing, trying to get all the lawyers who have been defending people to get them punished and to make them kowtow so that they won't defend the people who are protesting or whatever they're doing, so that you have no defense. They do that in authoritarian countries too. They do it in the European countries, nations I'm talking about around the world, when they want to take over and have a fascist place. They take over the universities. They take over everything in society that they think is going to give you some protection and make you feel. And it's like Kristi Noem, who's that woman who runs the Homeland Security thing now. She used to be a governor. Somebody asked her in a hearing, what about people's due process? And she didn't even know what due process was. She said something like, what? Oh, and then she started trying to explain what it was, and she had no idea. And so what you have is a situation where you have rights, but you don't. And let me not forget the courts. While the district courts have been very good, and many of us would get up every day and people would text me and see what that district court did. They stopped them from doing so and so, so and so, so and so. And I would say, good, glory, hallelujah. And then the Supreme Court, by the time it got up to them, they would say, first, this man can do whatever he wants to because he has immunity for his official acts. Remember, they said that in those papers case. And let him off the hook. And then the other thing that they say is, well, as Amy Coney Barrett said the other day, well, if the administration is doing something wrong, that doesn't mean that the courts should go too far to try to stop them. I mean, we shouldn't do something just because they are doing something wrong, which means that if they're doing something wrong, they can keep on doing it. So you can deport people. You can, when the district court says, don't deport that person, that's illegal. You can't do that. You look up and 10 minutes later, they come on the plane and send them to El Salvador. It could happen to anybody. And people ought to understand that if you're exercising your rights. But if you don't have lawyers, if they're cutting down on that, if you can't bring cases, just the other day, in the last day of the Supreme Court, they kicked the Louisiana redistricting case, which gave us one more congressman in a district where they're majority Black for the first time. So that would be two. They said, we're not going to decide the challenge to that this term, even though it's been briefed, it's been argued, it's been before the court. We'll do it next, term. And I was trying to figure out why they were doing that. I mean, why didn't they just decide the case? It's because they are trying to figure out another provision, which I won't bore people, is Section 1983, that is left to us that hasn't been gutted. They're trying to gut that provision, which makes it possible for individuals to go to court if they get a lawyer, and they can go to court themselves. They don't have to wait for the government or anything like that if they say their civil rights are being violated. They want to gut that so you can't go. So if something's happening to you, you have to go get the administration to defend you. Now, what do you think about the administration now? You think they're going to defend people against something that police did, or their right to vote has been encroached on, or they didn't get to go and get the doctor of their choice under their Medicare or their Medicaid? I don't think They're going to. And so this is a danger to us. All of our rights are up in the air at this time. And our financial expectations are up in the air. If you got a family member who needs to be put in a nursing home or someplace and they're on Medicaid, and when they cut that, they won't be able to go to the place where you want them to go to do that. All these things that are happening, whether it's the food program for kids, whatever it is, this is what the dire threat is. I think sometimes, I told somebody this morning, they're trying to kick us all the way back to slavery. You know, it's the end of Reconstruction that W.B. Du Bois talked about, where the curtain came down and the veil. Or Rayford Logan talked about the nadir, the darkest part that happened to us. And that is what we're looking to see if we can figure out a strategy to do it. Now, what should we do? You asked me, and I didn't answer you.
I know. I was going to come back with the answer. The question again. But I knew you would catch up. I knew you would. I knew you would get it. Yes, I did. I knew it.
Well, here's what we should do. We should do what they don't expect us to do in spite of them and in spite of ourselves. One of the things we've got to do is to restore community. The churches, many of our churches in our communities are in decline across the country in places in terms of people going to the church and organizing and doing. The church used to be the base of where people came and had meetings and, you know, went out and if you look at the whole history of our people, there were people who put their lives on the line and some died and many of them went to prison. I think about all those Mississippi people who were arrested. Most of the people in the prisons in Mississippi during the civil rights movement who were arrested were Black women and their children. People don't realize that. They were filled with these women, we call them, we were Negroes then, I guess, and their children in these prisons because they were protesting and demanding rights and all the rest of it. So we're going to have to take risks, but the community is going to have to come together, and we're going to have to push on the people who are supposed to be representing us in the Congress and everywhere, so that they don't keep worrying about whether they're going to get donations from funders or what's going to happen to this or that or them, their children. We want them to think about our children.
Dr. Mary Frances Berry is here. Written a lot of books. Your latest, I think, is Slavery After Slavery?
Slavery After Slavery.
Okay.
Slavery After Slavery.
Is that still viable? And what, because it came out this year, but you ain't know all of this was going to happen. So if you were to write an addendum or, you know, put an afterword, what would you add to that book that would help us navigate these times today?
Well, what I would add to it, and instead of adding to it, I just write another
book. I know that's true. You know what?
And I've been thinking about, because somebody said to me the other day, well, why doesn't the Constitution protect us? I said, you silly, silly boy.
Wait, before you answer my question, Dr. Berry, you grew up in a time when you were so poor that for a time you guys were put in an orphanage, you and your siblings, right. And there were no social safety nets because the New Deal did not include Black people, you know. Right. And so, you know, I often talk about my dad who was born in 1940, having to get up at age 5 and collect bottles. He had 8, you know, he was one of 8, yeah. And they lived in 2 rooms, he and his parents and his siblings. He slept in a bed with his 3 brothers. It was 4 of them in one full-size bed in one little tiny room. And I think about no safety nets, no school lunches, no breakfast, nothing. You had to figure it out, you know. And if you were poor, you had to figure it out. And that's why so many of us moved in with Big Mama, and and that was good as well. I feel like we're going back to those times when there won't be anybody there but us. But yet you went to not just to college, you went and kept going, got a PhD, got a law degree, just kept going. As you talk to people who know so much less than you know, not just because of your wisdom and time on this earth, I feel like we're going backwards in knowledge. How do you muster the patience to talk with people, like you said, that you silly boy? Like, what? How do you muster the patience to engage with people who won't do the deep study that you did, and why was that so important for you?
Well, it was important for me that always, no matter how poor and how, as I often tell people, my earliest memory was hearing my brother crying. He and my brother were in this orphanage, and he was older than me. And I didn't know why he was crying because I was a baby, but I just remembered in my ears that
Wow.
he was at through the night, he would be crying. So later on, when I got older, I asked him why he was crying, and he said, because I was hungry and because, I didn't have anything to eat. And every time they gave us something, if they gave us milk, they put half water in it and gave it to us to drink. One of the men who worked there would take money and buy pork chops, money that a parent would come by and leave their few little quarters and say, "Get some for my child," and he would take the money and go buy some pork chops or something for himself, and then he would try to sell the bones to the children. It was a terrible. I didn't know what the pain was, and I found out later. I don't know why I was able to. What you said about your father was true of us. When we finally got out of there, my mama took us over to one of her brothers, and he had his own children and his own poverty things, and they had, and one of the cousins, they had a shotgun house, two side, outdoor toilet, all of that, and we drank orange sodas for breakfast, okay? Because they were the cheapest thing they could find. I always thought when I was growing up that people always drank orange sodas for breakfast. And as a child, I would say, somebody would say to me at school or whatever, "What do you want, Peter?" "I want my orange soda," because I didn't know
Mm.
any better. I was, but in fact, and we slept, all together and piled up somewhere, happy that we could sleep and we weren't in the orphanage anymore. And my mother pulled us in part out of that. She went off while we were there and she got her license to be a beautician. But this was Nashville and they wouldn't let her be a beautician. They let her work in the white beauty shop and wash people's heads and, do stuff like that. So she finally rented a place really cheap and had a room in there where she set up her own beauty shop. And she took people, from the neighborhood. And that was the beginning of her trying to come and get us and bring us and try to get us. I would say, my mother didn't have to, whatever she did in her life, a lot of I agreed with and a lot I didn't. She didn't have to take us out of there and keep us from starving to death, but she did. And I had teachers. See, we tell lies sometimes about teachers. We say all Black teachers were wonderful. They were all good to us. And then they got integration and nobody was good to us. That's a lie. Uh, Not all Black teachers were that good to us because we were like these poor little ragamuffins and they were like the middle class. But I had at least one or two really wonderful teachers who knew that I was poor and that I was struggling. And they would always, one of them in particular, Minerva Hawkins, would always come up to me and say, "Now, what did you eat today? And what are you doing today?" She was always, and not just for me, but other children who needed things. I remember when she grabbed a jacket I was wearing after we got out of there, and my mother later on was working at some white folks' place part of the time and they gave her clothes and they gave her a jacket and I wore it because I didn't have another jacket and it got dirty. So I cleaned it. I went to school with it on. And she said, "What is that? Come here, Mary Frances. What is that smell on you?" She said, "What is that on your jacket?" I said, "My jacket was dirty and they told me if I put coal oil on it, I could clean it." Coal oil is kerosene. I said,
Oh
so
my
I went and
God.
got the kerosene from the lamps and I poured it all over my coat so I could clean it up so I could wear it to school. She said, "Leave that jacket." She took it off of me. She said, "We're gonna throw it away. If somebody strike a match, you'll blow up and everybody around you." I said, "Well, I didn't know that." And then she went down to home economics and got them to make me a jacket. I mean, she was a
Wow.
wonderful woman,
Wow.
but there were people who helped and were supports. I don't know where I got the strength uh, to actually keep on keeping on, as it were. I'm just glad I did. And there are other people who have done the same thing. So it's possible.
Mm. Y'all listening, 866-801-8255. Dr. Mary Frances Berry is here. I'm going to take Sylvester's been holding on since he knew you were on the phone. So Sylvester in Maryland wants to say hello to you. Welcome to the Karen Hunter Show. Hey, Sylvester.
Hey, Miss Karen, how you doing? Some people call you Professor Karen, but but anyway, Dr. Berry, I just want to thank you for all that you have done for our community. I was at the University of Maryland when you were provost there, and then when you and then in College Park, I'm from Maryland, and then when you went to the Civil Rights Commission, guess what? My aunt typed up most of the work for you, and she would stay late, and I used to pick her up. Her name was Mary Moore Higgs, and she used to talk about you all the time. So I just wanted to let you know that you are still thought of, and that the people that you have helped still appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate you calling in, and I thank you so much for remembering me. I need all the support I can get psychologically and otherwise. Okay, let's struggle on through this. We can make it.
You do believe that. I do too. I'm actually wildly optimistic because of the first thing that you said, restore community. We sit here every day in a space called Urban View that was here before we got here, and we imagined building the biggest community possible where we look out for each other. And I'm happy to say my 10 years on these airwaves, this audience is not disappointed. We have that. And to your point, I'm also challenging people to join organizations. If you think the NAACP or Urban League aren't doing a good job, start a branch, join the organization, change it. If your pastor is not doing a good job in the church, the Bible's clear about how you're supposed to go and challenge that, right? Or find a church that is doing the work. But I think you're absolutely right. That's the way forward in community. But I am concerned about this latest, attack on Haitians, because as I'm asking everyone, how do they know who's Haitian? If you're deporting Haitians, last I looked, we all Black people can pass for Haitian. And not that should even matter, but it's wild to me that that's on the table. Like any one of us can get snatched up, oops, and have, detained maybe for a month or two. Like, it's, to your point, where are the lawyers?
Yes, well, look, we should not be doing anything negative to Haitians. The United States is responsible for the continued poverty. France was responsible first, and they ought to give them some more money and stop talking about they should pay them back for ending slavery because their people lost money. I'm talking about the French. But we should not, because we have been unwilling at times to even trade with Haiti or do anything to help anybody in Haiti. We support coups in Haiti. We support, regimes that were, exploiting the people. We have been a bad, bad neighbor, so to speak, the United States I'm talking about, to Haiti. And Thomas Jefferson, for one, talked about how we ought to trade with them anyway because they had goods, and everybody cried out, no, because they got rid of slavery and they did it forcibly. And look at all the white plantation owners who lost out and whatever. So, yes, you're right that what they do with the Homeland Security is they identify people by their color. They see you brown or you black. I've had people picked up on the street in New Orleans, where I am half the time, and come to me and say, oh, my husband was picked up. They were out with the men were out there trying to get some work on the corner. And they just came by and picked up all of them. And they picked them up. They picked up Haitians. They picked up Hondurans. They pick up all these people. And even the ones that had protected status, which they're supposed to have, temporary protected status. He said, woman told me, the wife said, they wouldn't even look at their papers. They just took them away and took them on away. And that was the end of that. And
Leaving, I thank you. What do you do to stay? You look amazing. Really? Are you remember Cicely Tyson said she used to do 100 push-ups every day, and I thought that was incredible. Do you do anything, or is this just
Oh,
natural.
yes. I use a plant-based diet most of the time. And I go for an hour walk every other day and half hour the day I don't. And I do 45 minutes of stretches and weights every
And
day.
weights every day. How,
Weights
have
every
you
day.
have you been doing this your whole life, or did you start at a particular time?
Well, I used to play tennis and I used to be a runner. And then when
Okay.
I got so that my back, my hips started bothering me, I started doing all these other things, going to the gym and doing all this stuff. And I've been doing it ever since. Everybody should do something, every day. Don't just sit down, on your do nothing stool, as my mother used to say, doing nothing. And so I think that and the plant based diet, I think is really good.
And staying
My mind,
intellectually engaged. I was going to say, you stay engaged, writing these books and talking to people.
yes, yes. And I'm always getting ideas. Some days I think I wish I didn't get so many ideas. but but
I feel
anytime
seen.
anything happens,
I feel
anything that I
seen.
think of, and so I just, I've had lots of
We,
experiences, so
okay. We're coming back. We're coming back.
important.
You're listening to The Karen Hunter Show on Sirius XM's Urban View, Channel 126.
And my class was Stokeley Carmichael. We changed his name, of course. We were all philosophy majors. Stokely, Ackland Lynch, Colin Cox, and us, and they called us the nerds. So I was at Howard. I had Rayford Logan, who taught me all about of Haiti and the United States and Haiti and what they did to the Haitians. I learned all that very early. Elsie Lewis, History of the South, all the great people.
Toni Morrison teaching
Toni
there?
was teaching there too. She didn't teach me, but she was in the English department when I was there. So it was a great time. I became a philosophy major because I was a nerd. And I had been a science major. I did all the sciences. And then I got sick of them. And then I said, I'm glad I did them because it gave me a perspective on things.
Oh, my goodness. Blueprint, Professor Dr. Mary Frances Berry, Howard University, Stokeley Carmichael in your class. Toni Morrison's teaching in the English department. You are sitting under the great Rayford Logan, and you're in the sciences, but got bored with that and then came over here and oh my goodness. Tell us something about Stokeley Carmichael, because I feel like we may not know who's going to stand up in this time, but we know it's got to be young people because this is their time. Tell me something that you knew about Stokeley Carmichael.
Yes. Well, Julian Bond used to say that that people talk about passing the torch as you age to the younger generation. And he said, I've been thinking about who I want to pass it to, but then I decided that the person who grabs it from me and runs is the one that is going to get passed to. I'm not going to pass it to somebody. So Stokely, his demeanor and everything else, like all the other folks there, was mild. You never would have thought that he was going to become this, fire-eating person. But he was always, those of us who were in that class, we always were thinking about what's right and what's moral and what you should do. It's one of the things in philosophy you spend a lot of time thinking about and talking about. And so he, like the others, Cortland Cox and others, who actually all went down to the civil rights protests, started doing that. It was clear that he was going to do something. I didn't know what he was going to do, but you could tell that he had the energy, the intelligence, the demeanor, and the patience, because patience is really important. And he listened. All of us listened. When James Baldwin came, who we call Jimmy Baldwin, came to talk to students at Howard, and he would come talk to us nerds. And we listened intently to everything he had to say, all of us, Stokely and the rest of them, Ackland and the rest, to what he had to say. So we were like serious people, okay? Serious, and not just, as my niece said, worried about being entertained and having some fun. Well, fun is okay. People should have fun. I'm not trying to say people shouldn't have fun, but they ought to be about something. But I want to make sure, and that was a great time to be at Howard. It's always a great time to be at Howard anytime. But that was really a great time in the experience that we had and the teachers and all the rest. And Rayford, as you said, told us about Haiti and the history of it and all the stuff that had happened. He had written about it and everything else, and how the United States and all those countries screwed over. So we were well known. But what I wanted to make sure I said to you, that in terms of the things you have to do in order to climb up out of the captivity time, which is what we're in right now, the things that you have to do, strategies, boycotts. The Nashville movement with Diane Nash, because I'm from Nashville, and my baby brother, who was in middle school, we call it now, ran out of school and took all the kids with him. They all ran out to go down and join the protests, even though they were kids. And the teachers tried to stop them, said, "You can't run out of school. Go down here and do this. I'm going to get in trouble with y'all." And they went anyway. And my mother didn't know where my baby brother was. And my baby brother, as it turned out, had been arrested. So it took forever for her to figure out where he was. But boycotts work. They are effective. They work very well. And we should use them. And that right now, there's people boycotting some of the stores and other kinds of things. We should use boycotts as a strategy to try to make change, because business cares about a lot of things, but one thing they care about is making some money and having people buy stuff. So
let me just underscore that. The only issue I have with boycotting in this time is that, back then it was Ella Baker, it was NAACP. There were people leading boycotts that had integrity. I'm gonna put that over there. Y'all take that comment for what it is. And I also, I'm looking at these times now, and we have a tremendous opportunity to do some things. Okay, Dr. Berry, we have a tremendous opportunity to do some things. I agree with you with boycotts, but it requires strategy and time and integrity. And I feel like,
where community comes in. Karen,
that's where number one
comes in. Yeah. The loss of community comes in there, right?
Yeah. Yep. Someone said, if we had to do Montgomery today, it took a year. People walked to work for a year and got picked up, and they carpooled, and the police arrested. I mean, it was torture for a year walking. And I don't know if we have the fortitude, but maybe these times are going to force us into fortitude. So let me not put my mouth on it and see what happens. All right, boycotts. I completely agree. They do work.
Listen, we did it too with the Free South Africa movement. It took us a year. Of protests around the country and at the embassy to get them to pass sanctions. If we can do it for South Africa,
yes,
we should be able to do it for ourselves.
And boycotting for Black people in particular, we over-index. We are the biggest consumers of all these products. Our group bolsters all of these major Fortune 500 companies, especially the ones that produce cleaning products. Okay, if tomorrow. And banks, which is why they target us. This is why Wells Fargo targeted us, because we are the where the dollar doesn't circulate a whole lot in our community. It goes out into those pockets. If we kept the dollars in our community, everything would change, and it would get probably a lot more violent. But let me put that over there. Okay, number 3. Number 3. Do we have a third point, Dr. Berry? So it's restore community, boycott. They work. What else you got?
The other thing is to demand and hold our leaders accountable. People vote. I have a speech that I give. It's called "You Voted, So Now What?" And people, they spend all their time, their organizations, they spend all their time organizing us to vote. Okay. And then when it comes time to get something done, they don't spend all that time trying to get in. Our politicians are just as eager to get donations from corporations and people from this and that and the other, and we don't hold them accountable. And then what we should do is say to them and go to them in groups forcefully, like the kids did one time with the Black folks down in Florida, went to the congressman's office and said, "What are you doing for us?" Took children to do that. And so you got to put pressure on people and hold them accountable, and not just be happy. Oh, I'm just happy that we got, 2 congressmen, or we got this or that or the other. That's not what it's about. It's about representation to get something done. And we have to take risks. somebody, Jimmy Baldwin used to say that if you want to make change and you want to make things right, somebody's got to go through the fire. He used to tell us, that, and he wrote the fire next time, but he used to say that who's going to go through the fire? Who are going to people? I wrote a book called History Teaches Us to Resist, which is about all the different protests I was involved in. And somebody had to go through the fire every time in order to get to that last step, to get what had to be done. Somebody had to be willing to risk, okay? I don't mean burn themselves up. I mean that they had to be willing to go out there, whatever it took, like those women who were in the Mississippi jail with their children, all those prisoners down there. And so we're not really willing to take risks as much, and we don't have community. See, that's the basis of it. If we had community, then in fact we would understand help being with each other. When we did Free South Africa, they'd come over to my house, and we met every morning for a year in my house before the protests. We did my house because we didn't want the establishment to know what we were doing. And we figured if they just thought I was having these people over for breakfast,
wow,
which I wasn't because I don't cook. You got to have strategy. So look at it. History Teaches Us to Resist. You don't have to buy it. It's in the library and any of these other books that I've written, but that one in particular.
I'm going to give that book away today. Caller number 5 on the line 5, 866-801-8255. I'd like to do that from time to time, buy the book and then send it to a listener, because I think that's important that we use our currency to, imbue some knowledge and goodness into people's lives. History Teaches Us to Resist. I want that 5th caller. Let's go to Robert in Florida. Because we have some callers that want to talk to you. And
hi, can you hear me?
Hey, Robert, welcome.
Yeah. Hey, how are you? I enjoy your show. My whole family calls me and says, hey, let's all listen at the same time. But anyway, here's my deal. I'm all for boycotts. But what people don't realize is that there are whole echelons of companies above Target, above Walmart, above Allstate that are $44 trillion companies like BlackRock,
Robert, stop.
Yes.
Hey, you came in hot, so relax. Breathe. Okay. As Dr. Berry said, boycott is a strategy. And as I've said many times on these airways, maybe I need to reiterate it. Target's an avatar. Yes, they're way worse actors. But you know what happens when Target gets sent to its knees? All those others now are on notice. And now we can require some things, because it's not just me paying my dollars and not getting any cents back, right? Now Target's demise at the hands of Black people in particular, and all people who have decided to be a part of this, sends a message to everybody. Yes, they're way more egregious actors, but it's strategy, and strategy is power in this, in the way in which it works. Just like Montgomery, the bus boycott, there were bus boycotts before, right? In other places. This one was to send a message to all of these businesses that our dollar and our bodies would not be disrespected. And I think that that's the message. More than who, can you just do it and stay the course until we get the things? Now, what are the demands? That's the question. But that's where the strategy comes in, and the leadership and the integrity, which I'm questioning. But I'm going to say less. But I thank you and your family, Robert. I want to get Dr. Berry, do you want to co-sign or disagree?
Yes. What I want to say is that boycotts, nothing ever works by itself. Okay. People say, well, why don't we do so-and-so? Well, you do that and do something else. But the boycotts are effective because they hit people in the pocket. If you look at the reports that Target made on what their profits were last year, they went way down, which is sent a signal to everybody else. And in fact, some of the people at Target even said it was because of the boycotts. We do have the integrity factor. You got to be clear on who it is you're working with, because there are people who are not integrous, as Jesse Jackson used to say. Integrous, he used to say. And so we got to be careful that they out for a dollar for themselves, but somehow. And some of them, watch them, will go to the company that you're trying to boycott and get them to pay them off something to come out and speak against what you're doing or try to undermine what you're doing. You got to always be careful about who you're dealing with. but boycotts are important. Also, being willing to go and sit and talk with people in your neighborhood, who in fact don't understand the issues. You see, go and sit on their stoop, porch, or whatever they got, steps. Go as the people used to do who used to organize and explain to them things like, you got that check for the income tax thing, but they getting ready to take the stuff. They passed that too, so that they know what they're looking at down the road. So it takes time, it takes energy, it takes resilience. But I talk about the different protest movements I was involved in this book. And in fact, what works and what doesn't work and what you ought to do. But you got to put yourself on the line somehow. I don't mean that you should go out and, kill yourself or commit suicide or anything like that. I just mean that you have to be strong enough and committed enough that you tell the truth. People say talk truth to power. That people just say that and then they don't talk truth to power.
Correct.
But it's not just talking truth to power, it's leaning on power. Now, business may tell you, we don't care if you don't buy anything. If you believe that, you don't understand capitalism.
Period. That part, yes. Thank you, Robert, again. Let's go to Danielle. Danielle in Detroit. You are a winner.
Well, thank you so much, Karen. Thank you. I listen to you every day. You and Clay. I want to thank you for your knowledge, because your knowledge, it gives me the inspiration. It gives me additional knowledge to carry on for the legacy of my parents, of the seed that they planted in me, which I have planted a seed with my children. My husband, my dearly departed husband, he and I built a legacy within our community, and I continue that. And again, with the knowledge that I get from your show, it helps me, like you just said. Like your guest just said.
Dr. Berry, you about to read her book, and I want a book report. Yes. I want a book report, Danielle.
For sure. Yes. For sure. But I want to say when she said, okay, after an election, now what? In my community, we have an election coming up. We're about to elect a new mayor. And I'm hoping that my choice wins. And the first thing that I'm going to ask, if I get that opportunity, now what? Now what? Okay. Yes, again, thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'm sorry for your loss, and I'm glad that you're here. You're not alone, Danielle, and congratulations. Let's get one more call in. We got 2 minutes. Shay in Baltimore, Maryland. You're on with Dr. Berry, Mary Frances Berry. Hello, Shay.
Hello, ladies. How are you?
Awesome.
Listen, I am a history major at the University of Maryland. And I've been on this path for a moment. And I'm in an African American studies class. And I ran across something that Bayard Rustin said in 1965 about automation taking Black people's jobs. And I just found it so profound. It was like he was here right now talking to us. Dr. Berry, can you tell me anything about Bayard Rustin and why was he so concerned about automation in 1965?
Is that a question?
Yes, that's a question. Did you know Bayard Rustin?
Yes. He was concerned about it, as a lot of people were, because automation had already begun with most things, not in the major way that it has expanded now, but it already was in existence in some fields. And he was talking about the particular effect that would have on Black people and people who were either skilled labor or unskilled in what they could do. If he was around now, he would be even more concerned. But I have to tell you that automation and then coming up with AI and all these other things that are happening are going to have a tremendous effect, not just on Black folks' jobs, but on white folks' jobs, because many white people want to go to college. They want the children to go to college, just like we do. And they want them to get white collar jobs and all of that. And many of those are being sucked up by what has happened. Also, having China make things, and the whole textile industry in South Carolina and other places, Tennessee, went down the drain when the Chinese started coming in with it. So that, yes, we need to be concerned about it, but we need to learn about it. Don't get me started on schools, because the schools, many of them are so terrible, and we don't seem to be able to figure out, what to do about it for the kids. But yes, he was concerned about it then because it already started and it was already being talked about, and would be concerned about it even more today.
Well, our time is up, unfortunately, and I want to thank you, and I pray you come back. You've been on several times. You've been on with Dr. Carr, Urban View Mornings. Keep going, and thank you for all of the work that you're doing and the inspiration and the knowledge. I appreciate you, Dr. Berry.
Okay, and thank you for having me.
We're ready. We're prepared. Do not give in to fear. We are fearless. This is not the time to be afraid. This is a time to stand up and fight back and to resist any temptation for them to divide us. We're in this together. The rule of law is on our side. We will not give in, not give up. We will not capitulate. We will not bow. We will not bend. We will survive.